Stand by. Is this thing on?
Yes, Dan.
Oh, hello.
You're listening to Old News with Dan and Carrie.
This just in.
Breaking news to report.
We are live.
Old newscasters
Can we just say former?
Sure. Former newscasters reunite behind the mic after more than 20 years.
Old news is good news.
Stay tuned.
1. Welcome back to Old News with Dan and Carrie. This is season 2, and for our first episode of season 2, we have a great guest for you today. You see him on the screen right now, Justin Bomberg. Justin is working in community relations with Rogers Behavioral Health. That's out in the San Francisco area, and he's also done digital media production for them over the years. He's also the founder and CEO of a company called Story Me This Creative Incorporated. He founded it more than 25 years ago, and they have produced TV, film, marketing projects for businesses and nonprofit. And he's also worked as a video producer in a number of capacities for academia. And of course, he started, like Carrie and I did, in the TV business. And Justin started on the floor crew, I believe. He can tell us more about that. And I buried the lead here. He toured with a little rock and roll band called the Rolling Stones. Justin Bomberg, everyone. Thanks for being here, Justin.
Hey, thanks for having me. Yay, good to see you again.
Nice to see you.
Been a while.
And Justin, once everybody hears the Rolling Stones, they probably don't want to talk about anything else, right?
That does happen quite a bit.
It happens a little bit. But first,
I've done some talks at some schools.
Yeah.
And a lot of the kids, they don't even know who they are. So
I bet.
sort of drives things home, sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, that's perfect for old news then. That's
it is.
Right?
That's why you're, well,
Glory days.
they are in their 80s, so, but still touring.
I know, yeah, right.
Which is amazing to me.
Incredible.
So let's take it all the way back, Justin. You and I, we met back in the TV days, and we spent a lot of windshield time together traveling out to stories because you were a photographer. I was a reporter at the time, but you started right at Channel 27, WKOW TV, as a floor crew guy, right?
Yes. When I was still in college,
Yeah.
I literally would sweep the floor sometimes in the studio and work my way up from floor sweeper to teleprompter to, eventually news photographer, producer occasionally, and so on.
So were you going to school for journalism at the time, or what was your major at UW? No.
Philosophy was my major. That's what my degree is in. I did eventually add communication arts, radio, TV, film as a second major. So I have a double major in those two. But I was thinking of becoming a philosophy professor at one point. That lasted maybe about a month. And then that's when I picked that major. But philosophy was a great thing, and we could do a whole nother podcast about that. But it was really interesting for me to do philosophy during the day, where we would sit and talk for hours upon hours about, Dan, are you a real person or just a figment of my imagination?
Yes.
And then at night, I'd be hitting deadlines on the newscast, like go, 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 literally running in the hall. So like that juxtaposition within one day was such a great training ground for me and like my brain development and everything for my future career,
Yeah. Did you take the job at KOW because you were thinking about getting into TV at the time, or was it just like, hey, this job's available, I'm going to take it?
Do you remember Rose Johnson? I
Yeah.
think she was the front desk. Was it
Yes.
her name?
Yeah.
Yeah. I used to work with her at WPS Insurance at night. And I would move boxes around for her to her desk. And she knew that I was into photography. I would sit with her at the break room, and I would tell her how I'm into photography and like stage design and lighting and stuff like that. And she said, well, I'm actually the receptionist at Channel 27. Maybe I could get you in there. And sure enough, like a couple of weeks later, I can't even remember his name, but he ran like the production side of 27 Peter or something, Pete. He called me and he said, well, we're only hiring you because Rose said you're really cool to work with. So I got in on the floor crew, and then the rest is history.
So you had already had an interest in photography to go with your philosophy. That was something that you had an interest in maybe high school or before?
Yeah, still photography, yeah.
Mm.
That's how, well, I watched one of your other podcasts with Greg Sheevy, my old
Hmm.
mentor in this business,
Yep.
and he's really into still photography too. So he and I really
Hmm.
started hitting it off kind of early on when I was on the floor crew. And then eventually I kept telling him I was looking to do more and learn more. And maybe I should try the video side of things. And he's like, okay, yeah. And he started training me on video, and I would go on shoots with him. And I think probably you, Dan, maybe a couple of
Yep.
times, and
Yep.
Andrew Bohag
Mm.
and people like that, Tony Galley. And they would let me go along and carry the tripod. And then eventually I just started learning how to turn on the camera. And, I don't know, about 6 months ago, Greg decided to give me a shot because he was desperate for somebody.
You were a
That's been a
grip.
theme as well. Yeah, we heard several stories like
Desperation.
that Greg would have that eye. I mean, he was really plugged into what people wanted, but I think he could really see potential, and he would pluck people from various areas of the station and then bring them back, train them, and then you guys ended up being like the most amazing videographers too.
Yeah, well, he's still to this day one of the best I've ever seen at that
Hmm.
job. It's too
Not
bad that
many
he's
can tell a
retired
story
for,
like Greg. Yeah.
no.
Hmm.
And the way he could capture like a natural moment without any sort of manipulation of the scene at all. It was like complete journalism.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
he would just anticipate like somebody's going to go do this, and he would go wait. Even if it took 5 minutes, he would just go wait for it. I know that would get kind of annoying sometimes for you reporters to have to stand and wait while we get that 1 2 second shot.
No.
But yeah, not you two.
No. Now that doesn't happen anymore. They just pull out their phones and start shooting. They're not going to
Yeah,
wait for the photographer.
right.
Hey, well, and one thing I do remember too with you, I think even before you were a photographer, you spent a lot of time, and we've talked to a lot of people about this over the course of this podcast. You spent a lot of time putting in extra time. I can remember you
Oh, yeah.
grabbing, at the time we had 3/4 inch tapes, and you would grab a whole stack of those 3/4 inch tapes that other photographers would go out shooting, and you'd go into an edit bay. What were you doing in there, Justin?
Well, that's how I learned editing. So I would
Yeah.
just experiment. It was tape to tape before digital editing.
Mhm.
And it was at that age, especially, you just, at least I was insatiable for knowledge and learning new skills. And when I was on the floor crew, I could just sit in the break room all night between the newscasts, but I was just so bored at doing that. So
Yeah.
I just started hanging out with all the editors and the photographers and you all, and just trying to learn. And that's, Greg noticed that too. I think that was a big part of why he decided to give me a chance.
So you
Yeah.
went from floor crew then to the news department.
Yes.
And that was all before you graduated or after?
Yes. Yeah. Before.
Wow. Hmm.
So my last semester, I didn't do very well with grades because I figured I already had my job. But
Right.
yeah, but I muddled through and got the degree.
So when you
That's
first
awesome.
started as a photographer then, Justin, at KOW, do you remember what shift you were doing? Were you doing a night side or were you doing weekends? I can't even remember.
Well, both. Yeah,
Both.
night
Okay.
and weekends. Yeah, but I was pretty quickly, five full time, 5 days a week.
Yeah, that's what I remember. You kind of moved up the ladder pretty quickly.
Yeah,
And
it
Mhm.
was fast. Yeah.
you weren't even at KOW that long before you went on to another station. You went to Milwaukee, didn't you?
Yeah, Channel 6 WITI recruited me because at the time
Mm.
they were really big. They had a bunch of NPPA, National Press Photographer Association people, and they were
Yep.
trying to become the station of the year. I got to win a bunch of NPPA awards and all that at that time, and that was fun and exciting. And I'd kind of started on that path with Greg,
Mhm.
with
Yep.
Greg's teaching, and he sent me to the NPPA annual convention that happens in Oklahoma.
Mm.
So Channel 27 actually sent me there too when I was like 22 or 23 years old, and it
Wow.
just blew my mind, that whole experience. And um, I was just hooked.
I wanted to ask you because, you know, you were a photographer, but really I felt like you were a producer because I always remember thinking we're going to collaborate on this.
Oh, I absolutely thought of it that way all the time. Very much a team effort. And I would always be thinking of like the opening shot. And then I
Yep.
remember I used to talk to probably both of you about like, hey, I was thinking we could start with this shot. So could you write some script to make that work? And then I got this great moment. Maybe we could put it in somewhere in the middle, like somehow can we lead up to this moment? And then sometimes even like the ending shot too. Like so we'd do the beginning, middle, and end. It was always going on in my head the whole time, like when I would show up on a scene.
Yeah.
Even
Do you
like
think
even if it was just simply like a public hearing, like in a small town, I would think like, okay, if it was at night, I would try to get some great sunset shot, like to set the scene, even though it's just a really boring story of people sitting around like at a public hearing,
Yeah.
but I would try to always add some sort of little flair like that. A lot of that came from Greg.
Well, I was going to ask Greg, and did your philosophy major help influence that too? Because you're always thinking.
I guess so, probably. And then I've always been into storytelling too. That's why I named my company Story Me This, because those were the first words apparently I ever strung together when I was a little toddler.
Really?
Yeah, and so my parents would always tease me about that. That meant like read me a story. And so I've just always been into the storytelling arts of all kinds. So yeah, I just can't seem to shut it off. I never planned to be in TV news. It was just kind of a fun job that I got in college.
Yeah.
And it can be a little intoxicating, right? When you do all these wild stories. And then eventually I started doing Packers games and stuff like that and on the field. And you just kind of roll with it. And I just blinked my eyes and like 6 or 7 years went by and I was like, whoa, what am I doing? So,
What were some of the best moments at the Packers games?
the first one I ever did, there's actually clips of this on YouTube. This was my very first Packer game. There was it was Pittsburgh Steelers playoff game.
That's where I live. I'm in
Really?
Pittsburgh. Yes.
Oh, really? I didn't know.
Yes. Yes.
Well, there was a touchdown that happened like right in my face. And then the guy catches the ball and he falls and he rolls like right onto my legs.
Oh my
And
goodness.
so, and then he looked up at me, he's like, hey, dude, or something like that. I was pointing the camera down at him. And I just always remember that. And then later in the game, there was an overthrown ball. Dan, you probably know Neil O'Donnell, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And he overthrew the ball and it hit me right. You could see it on my shot. I saved the shot and it almost hit right into the lens, but it hit me right here. And I had this bruise here for like weeks.
Oh,
I
no
couldn't
way.
believe how hard he could throw the ball.
Yeah.
And then there's a famous moment that happened at the end of the game where this guy named Yancey Thigpen dropped the ball in the end zone. Do you remember this game?
I remember this game. Yes.
That was my first game. And
wow.
And it happened right in front of me when he dropped the ball. And I was just like, I was just hooked. It's like an adrenaline rush,
So when you were there, you're at Lambeau, you're covering that game, the Pittsburgh game. Were you going into the locker room then too afterwards?
Yeah.
Were you doing the interviews? Were you with a reporter or were you on your own?
It could be either or. It just depended on the situation.
Yeah. So that was always kind of cool too. You get to go in there and hear what the guys were talking about after the game.
Yeah.
I mean, now there's so much accessibility.
You're walking around like, yeah, totally. And you're walking around with like the most famous sports athletes in the world,
Yeah.
And you're 22 years old or whatever. It's kind of fun,
Totally.
Yeah.
But you left all that to start Story Me This.
Yes.
And that was quite a leap, right? Because you had a solid TV job, a great TV market for a photographer, but you kind of left that all behind. Was it just something you'd always wanted to do?
Not necessarily. I kind of learned it as I went. And now I can really see it in hindsight. I've become basically a serial entrepreneur. Like I'm always starting little businesses and I'm just sort of geared that way and I can't seem to stop myself. So that was the beginning of all of that. And so I just never really stopped. Occasionally I'll take these day jobs like what I have now. And then I had one at the University of Wisconsin for a while, just for different reasons, like getting mortgages and just some nice stability, some stable
paying
income.
bills, blah, blah,
health
blah.
insurance, all of that stuff. Yeah. I suppose.
So that helped out tremendously.
So were you freelancing then? Like, a company like Dan's would say, hey, Justin, we need a shooter for this, commercial we're making. And then you would come in. Is that how your business began?
Or grip. I was even gripping and lighting and stuff like that.
So whatever.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then eventually I did start freelancing for the networks too.
Yep.
So then I started doing a lot of network work, which was fun too and exciting. I remember I did some stuff for Dateline, NBC.
Really?
shows like that. Yeah. I think I did one for 48 hours. I can't even remember. I did so many.
What were some of, well, what was like your most memorable one of those for national
Well,
stuff?
eventually I started doing pro sports again too. So that became kind of my main one for a while, and that was probably the most fun again. Because then I'd be doing playoff games and all around the Midwest, and they would travel me places and stuff like that. So that was a lot of fun. Eventually that led to my touring career.
Yeah, let's get to that right now.
Let's go there.
Okay. So connections from that. Then it was funny, like a guy that I used to work with a lot on sporting events, he said he knew that I was a musician. We didn't talk about that. I considered a career as a musician as well.
Do you play bass? Is that what you play?
Yeah, bass guitar.
I remembered.
Nice. Well, you had some sort of musical background too. What was that, Carrie?
Singing, dancing, piano.
What was that group? There was like a group.
Well, Kids from Wisconsin.
Oh, is that what it was? Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Now she's got her own group called the what are you guys called again?
Happy Hour.
Happy Hour.
Duo.
A musical duo. I was going to call you guys the duo, the dynamic duo, but Happy Hour, the musical duo.
Well, we were saying Happy Hour, but then it gets confusing, so we had to add musical duo.
Yeah.
She plays the ukulele.
I'd have taken that the wrong way.
Yeah.
And that's
but I digress.
Yeah.
Oh wow, cool. I didn't know that.
Yes.
So back to the Stones.
Well, this guy knew that I was a musician as well. And I was playing in bands around Milwaukee occasionally, just kind of filling in as a bass player. And that was fun. And then he said, my aunt works on video crews for big international tours, like rock tours. Would you ever want to talk to her? I was
You're like, yeah.
Turns out she's also from Wisconsin. She went to UW-Madison. She's sort of an institution in the touring industry, one of the first women, or maybe the first, to ever be a video director on tours. I'm not sure. Yeah, and then eventually I did get put in touch with her, and she calls me out of the blue one day saying, hey, I'm doing the tour coming up for the Rolling Stones, and I need a camera person. Do you want to come along? It's like I almost dropped the phone, Like, does the Pope wear a funny hat?
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then there was like a month of interviewing, a couple of phone call interviews. They wanted to kind of check me out. There's like security checks and all that. And the news background was hugely beneficial for me to get that job, because they knew that I could handle celebrity and just being in intense moments like that.
Yeah.
I had done a couple of celebrity things over the years, in news. So I was used to being around them. Oh, I was going to tell you, I actually wrote this down, but I forgot to tell you. One of the funniest stories I had at Channel 27, I'm backtracking a little bit. Is that okay?
That's okay.
Sure.
Yeah, let's do it.
There's the town of Dunn near Madison.
Yep.
And the band Brooks and Dunn came into town to do a concert.
Oh.
And they renamed the town of Brooks and Dunn for the day.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I went out there, and there's all these fans gathered around, like, I don't know, like hundreds of people out in this cornfield somewhere out there. And I show up, and I had no idea who they were. And so I get the camera up and running, and I'm holding out the mic like this, and I asked them to say and spell their names, both of them. They were so insulted.
And you are.
That's awesome. Are you in the band? Yeah. That's always the first thing we say. Say and spell your name. What is your title?
But I truly didn't know who was who, And,
everybody's got their genres, Justin.
Yeah.
And it just isn't yours. Right.
No. I'm more old school country, not the new country.
Right. Hank Williams, those guys. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I knew all those people.
Yeah.
But so just having those kind of experiences really helped with the Stones. And eventually, about a month later, she called to tell me I got the job. And then like a couple of weeks later, I'm on a plane to Toronto, where we did rehearsals for a month in the old Maple Leaf Garden.
Did you fly with the band?
Yeah.
Not that first trip, no, but eventually, yes.
Really?
And then, in fact, going back to the news training, and Chris Strand, the woman who hired me, she knew my news background, and so she knew that I could go and just record a bunch of stuff by myself. So there was like this last minute show that ended up happening where they played at this small club in Toronto called Palais Royale. You know, that they do these like pop-up shows, and it gets the whole city talking, and like the whole city's a buzz, right? About this show. There's this rumor that the Stones are going to play this little club tonight. Well, I knew like the day before, and then so Chris said, hey, can you go just record the whole event, like the people gathering and all that, and just record that whole day? And sure enough, I just grabbed a camera and a mic, and I did. And that morning, it was 5 days later after I arrived, so I hadn't even met them yet. And the next thing I know, I'm riding in limos with them, hanging out with them in their dressing rooms at the small little club, and recording like everything. And it was pretty amazing.
So cool. Yeah.
So did you have to sign like NDA agreements and stuff like that you couldn't?
Yeah, I think we did. I can't remember for sure, but yeah. It was just sort of you knew not to say anything. Yes.
But I can remember talking with you after. And how long were you on tour, first of all, with them?
About a year and a half.
Was that the Licks tour? Is that what that was called? I can't remember.
It was called 40 Licks. Yeah, 2002 to 2003.
Okay.
I did 110 roughly shows with them.
So what did that look like? Yeah, if you were doing a show, like a big show, not the one you just described, like big, huge stadium show, what was your day like?
Well, the big stadium shows, we would all help like set up the screens too. So it's very much like a roadie lifestyle. And then I would run the camera on the stage too, the handheld. So on every show.
So you'd be running around, like kneeling, getting this shot, and then you're listening to Justin, go this way, go that way, go Chris, down, go up.
Yep, she would be telling us, although she knew to kind of just, eventually she would just trust us, you know, like she knew that we knew what we were doing. And you kind of get used to, you know, the songs, and you know, like where there's this keyboard part, like I'm going to get over and get ready for the shot of the hands on the keyboard and that sort of thing. But then oftentimes I would also get like the documentary footage during the day or afterwards too, in addition to the live show. And so if we were, you know, all of our shows, we'd have stuff going into the screen, but then we would also sometimes do live broadcasts too. So we also did live on HBO. Apparently there were 20 million people watching that. And it was from Madison Square Garden on that tour. And we did some England like that. We did one in India. The first ever shows in India, which I have some pictures of that I can send you.
How many countries were you in, Justin? How many?
Somewhere around 27, I believe.
Wow.
Did you get a chance to get out and see the countries you were in, or was it such a whirlwind? Not really.
We would have, it was considered sort of a low key tour, like with a lot of off time. But even so, I'd maybe have like a day here or a day there. And occasionally we'd maybe go golf or something like that, but not like a full on, like go see the sights or anything like that. Yeah.
Please tell me you golfed with Keith.
No, I never did.
I'm kidding.
I did get to play. I was also in the crew band, so we would do the sound checks in the afternoons, and that was fun. Amazing. That's still almost I kind of get chills thinking about it, because some of the biggest, you know, like the Olympics just happened in Paris,
right?
And they had the Stade de France there, and we did a show there, and I vividly remember doing sound check in where, you know, the audio guy would say, okay, Justin, give me some bass. And I'd be standing up there going bong, bong. And it would like, the whole stadium would vibrate, you know? And
that's awesome.
And then the rest of the crew and I that were in the crew band, then we would just sort of jam for a while, and they would adjust all the audio levels. And so I've jammed at all these stadiums across the world. And then occasionally some of the band members would come out, like goof around with us or sing. Bobby Keys, the saxophone player, he came and did a show with us in Singapore. We were in Singapore, and we played at a club.
Did you have a name, like the
Yeah.
The
it was
video
called
crew, or
No, it was just called Crew Dude.
Crew
It was
Crew
mostly
Dude.
the guitar techs, and I was like the only one that
Oh,
wasn't like part of the guitar tech scene.
huh.
Yeah.
How cool.
That's so fun.
So also tell me, or tell us. No, don't tell Carrie, just tell me.
Only tell Dan. La, 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 I'm not listening.
Tell us, like, what was it like to, were there times where you would be just kind of sitting around in a room with, Mick Jagger and Ron and Keith, or was that kind of, were they off in their own area doing their own thing, or did you actually kind of interact with them?
Oh, I interacted with them all the time.
Hmm.
And sometimes that intimate like that, like you said, not frequently, but many times throughout the tour, yes.
Yeah.
Um, One of the weirdest things that happened, we were stranded in an airport in India, and because the luggage truck ran into the engine on our plane.
Oh my.
And so I sat with Charlie Watts in the corner of the airport in Mumbai, India, and I watched with him live on TV when they pulled down the statue of Saddam Hussein.
Oh yeah.
Whoa.
And me and Charlie were watching that together, just doing commentary on it. We were the only two people off in the corner. He was trying to
Hmm.
just be incognito, because we were waiting to figure. They were trying to get like a private plane just for the band, and
Mm.
then the rest of us were being put on other planes just to get out of the country.
Hmm.
But so there's all kinds of little stories like that. Yeah.
Do you
Did
walk
you have
away?
anything Sorry. Did you have anything crazy happen like on stage when you were doing the filming? Like you fell over the cord or, anything like that?
There were a couple of times I would get in Mick's way accidentally, and he'd go dancing across the stage, and he would always do something funny. Like he was always good natured about it. But there
Oh,
was a
that's
couple of
cool.
times like he pinched me on a butt cheek like really hard a couple of times, like where it was painful, or he'd kind of like throw his shoulder into me and then turn around and smile, like like get out of the way.
Well, and do you
He was
walk
always
away
like
from that?
that.
Do you walk away from that whole experience? I mean, did you walk away going, hey, these guys are just the regular dudes like the rest of
Yes,
us? Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. It just starts feeling like a job after a while.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But there are times like you would go on breaks and go back home, and then you realize, oh my God, I can't believe I have this job. Like, but but then when you're doing the job, it just feels like work. Yes, and you
Hmm.
just got a job to do, and you're a professional, and you just do it.
Well, and at that
What
time in their lives,
surprised?
oh, sorry. I was going to say at that time
We
in their
both have
life,
so many questions.
yeah, no, at that time in their life, they were like in their, what, 60s and 50s, probably. So they were
By
family
around
guys.
60, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, didn't Mick had kids along or something like that?
Yeah, there was a funny moment with him. He was in the catering line in front of me one time, which was, I thought was funny. And he was holding his like 3-year-old at the time, who's now got to be like low 20s. Um, and the kid was whining for ice cream, just like any other parent. And he's trying to like talk the toddler down and getting him to calm down. And it was really funny to watch that. Yeah. Right in
After
front of
two
me.
bites of beans, you can
Yeah.
have your ice
Yeah.
cream.
It was pretty much like that. Yeah.
Was anything a huge surprise about rock star life?
Not really. It's all pretty much like you think.
Really?
Yeah. And that's one reason I didn't keep touring, is because, all that stuff about touring is true, like what the
Mm.
lifestyle's like. And I came to like a crossroads moment of, do I want to keep doing this or start a family? And I met my now wife
Mm.
while just before I left on the tour. So we decided I just decided like it was either one or the other.
Mm.
I didn't feel like
Yeah.
I could do both.
Hmm.
And so it also felt like I've been there, done that, and I had all these fun experiences and
Yeah.
on to the next thing.
I
Yeah.
remember though, you had opportunities to do it again though down the road,
Yeah.
didn't you? Was that
Yep.
hard to decide not to do it?
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah, especially like, so after that, I started doing, like you mentioned, like corporate videos or marketing.
Yeah.
Sometimes that could be kind of boring, comparatively
Mhm.
speaking.
Mhm.
And so yeah, it was definitely tempting. And then, but by that time too, we also had little babies at home.
Mm.
Right.
And yeah, and just the money, it pays pretty well. So at the, back then too, I was struggling more with money. So
Right.
it was very tempting a number of times, but it was kind of an either or situation. It
Hmm.
wasn't both.
And
Could
that was
live
again
together.
with the Rolling Stones?
Yeah,
Or
with
a
them and
different band?
some others as
Oh.
well too. Yeah.
Mm.
And then either other roles too. Like there was a chance they were talking to me once about being a guitar tech
Mm.
too. So that would have been
That
fun
must have
since I
been
haven't
really
had,
hard. Yeah.
yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
What are the responsibilities of the guitar techs?
well, you make sure everything is tuned up and ready to go at a moment's notice so they can just
Mm.
grab it and it's going to sound good.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So you're always messing with the strings and the electronics, making sure everything goes through the amps okay. And then all the amps work as well too, and electrical issues.
And all
Yeah.
part of the sound check and
That was one fun thing that I had too, is that on my side of the stage, I had it was before GoPros, like that company
Mm.
didn't even exist yet. And
Right.
at the time we called them lipstick cameras, right? And
Oh
it was like
yeah.
a little jar of lipstick. And then we made this contraption where it could go on Ronnie Wood's guitar. And so as he's playing the guitar, it would look down the neck and
Oh,
his
wow.
fingers were gigantic on the screen, That was still kind of a newer thing at that time, Now it's
Yeah.
like really common, but back then it was a big deal, and he had to be attached to a cable the whole time too. So that was one of my responsibilities, was to get that guitar set up every day. And I would run out and put it on him and take it off for that song every show. So I kind of was like a guitar tech for one song for every show. And that was kind of fun too. And he would always goof around with me. He's really funny. And
So then you
happy-go-lucky
came,
guy.
you got off of that tour, you came back, and then did you go right back into your business then? I'm trying to remember how that all worked.
Well, technically, even the Stones were paying my business, so it
I
was
guess,
the business
yeah.
through all of this. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Right, yeah.
And then eventually, I've had full-time employees, part-time employees with my business, and just depending on how much work I get,
Now, are you
No,
in
you-
California now?
Yes, I'm in San Rafael, California, Marin County. That's where I live now.
Okay.
I'm from this area originally.
Yeah, I was gonna
So
say.
yeah, it was really fun for me to get back here. I was trying to get back for years and years, but
Mm.
when I was growing up, we moved to Madison, so I went to high school and college in Madison.
Oh, that's what I was going to ask. So your whole family had moved to Wisconsin. That's how you got there.
Yeah.
Mm. Do you
So
still
I
have
was
family
always,
in California now?
oh yeah, yeah, in
Oh.
both places. I feel like I have two homes. It's here and there, pretty in
Mhm.
Wisconsin.
Nice.
So yeah, and I like them both.
Yep.
And so now tell us what your life is like in terms of, your career, and you still have your business and you're working a day job, I suppose we'll call it.
Yeah.
What's your life
Well,
like now?
the first one I did was at the UW Madison,
Yep.
and then I was there for 5 years. I was pretty much the main video producer there, and did
Oh.
they sent me to South Africa for a while. For a few
Wow.
weeks.
What'd you
We
do
did-
there?
We profiled a lot of work that scientists were doing throughout South Africa.
And so we are tracing really the basic origins of our planet, the origins of life, by looking out into the universe.
Um,
So
that was
became
very fascinating.
informed
That
from
could be a whole
star
nother
stuff.
episode.
And
But
now we are
the,
trying to understand the
and then
stars
Paris, I
that
got to go to
form us.
Paris again for the UW, and I had an office in Bascom Hall, my own office, which was really cool. Yeah.
That is cool. I
'Cause
do
I know
have a
you went-
dog. I have a dog named Bascom, you know.
Oh, nice. I remember you went, but Dan, you didn't go to the UW, did you?
I did not. I went to UW Milwaukee.
That's right. I remember.
Yeah, I was a
We
Panther.
won't talk about that. Yeah. But
Yeah, I did
so-
work for UW.
okay, that's good.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh,
All right,
remember,
you
we
passed.
worked
You
with
can
you
stay.
a little bit. We worked with you a little bit. In fact, you saved our butt because we were working on something and the business was kind of ending, and you kind of took over on a project that we were working on. And thank you for that.
Oh, thanks. Well, you guys did a good job, so that's how you
Yeah.
got the job.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it
But
was fun.
yeah, so I did that for 5 years, and then eventually I moved over through my sister worked at Rogers Behavioral Health, and they needed somebody to do some like mini documentaries, they called them, and then
Oh.
eventually it became their first television ad that they ever made. So I ended up
Huh.
getting in with Rogers doing that kind of work,
Mhm.
and another case of like 3 years went by, and I just blinked my eyes and just like, what's going on? But then I heard there was an opening for the business development job, or community relations, we call it, for the Rogers Clinic in the San Francisco Bay Area. And then I just thought, okay, I've wanted to kind of put the camera down for quite a while. And I was always wanting to be seen more as a business person rather than the cameraman.
Right.
And so it was a good opportunity for me to kind of switch careers. And that was almost 3 years ago now. I switched into this role, and I've been doing that for Rogers all around Northern California. And then they just added Los Angeles clinic for me as well. So I'm pretty much splitting my time between San Francisco and Los Angeles right now.
So you're traveling back and forth.
It's like the old days. Yeah.
Yeah.
And my Hilton points are like going up again. So
right.
that's been nice. Yeah.
That's a good perk. So have you
Yeah.
been happy with the transition? Do you miss
Yes.
the camera on your
I
shoulder?
kind of don't, to be honest.
Really?
I see those clips of like the Stones on YouTube or whatever, and I could see myself on the stage a lot of the time. Or we would have our opening bands would be like AC/DC. They would be our opening band. And there's some clips of them performing, and he's doing the Angus Young's doing that walk that he does while he's playing a guitar.
Yeah.
Like right in front of me, and you can see me like standing behind him, and it's like, so I miss those kind of aspects of it. But overall, like, I'm focused on the future basically. And, I have all these plans that I've got that I'm trying to make happen. So yeah, I just keep thinking about moving forward, and it's fun to reminisce like this at times, but I'm not sitting around lamenting about it. No, not usually.
That's great. That's
Plus,
awesome.
20 years ago, your body moved a lot easier, I imagine.
That's true. I can't remember the last time I've had a pain in my back, and that used to be really common.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You hear that
how
from a lot
heavy
of
are
folks.
those cameras are heavy.
I can't even remember. I remember people talking about like 20, 25 pounds.
Yeah.
Just on
That's a
one
lot.
side, like
Yeah.
this. So you're always walking around like that.
Right. Like a chiropractor's dream.
Yeah.
So what's a community relations guy for Rogers do? What are you out doing on a day-to-day basis?
I'm mostly just letting people know about Rogers. Its history. It's a 117-year-old nonprofit based in Wisconsin, but now in 10 other states as well. And I'm just letting people know out here that it exists and how unique it is. So I'm letting the community know. I'm letting all the psychiatrists, all the therapists in the area know. And then I help get people in too. Like, so dealing with insurances and all that sort of stuff and screenings. Just kind of help coordinate a lot of stuff. So that's mostly what I'm doing.
So your career, developing brand identities and, doing communications and producing things, a lot of those, you're a jack of all trades kind of when you do what you did all of those years. And that probably really kind of took you to this point and filled your cup to be able to do that, I'm assuming.
That's exactly right. I was going to talk about that too. The news training sets you up for so many different types of jobs and so many different types of fields. And I love how I can be like a social chameleon and work with all these different types of people. Listen to their stories. I'm really good at listening. So I'll get these calls from families and they'll tell me their whole story. And I'll listen and I'll ask questions. I just feel like a reporter again. And then I can answer their questions eventually when I get all the information. But so often people call in, I'll listen, and they tell me I'm the first one that really just kind of listened to their story, and it's really nice. It's very frequent that people will be crying with me on the phone because they're so excited that somebody gave them the time and the attention, and then they were able to get in with Rogers, or maybe even sometimes some other places. I might help them if Rogers isn't the right fit. And all that comes back to news too. And like, I can hear we take like pretty severe cases. So I hear some really bad things, like bad stories. And that's another thing that news gets you used to as well.
Right.
Like Dan, I don't know if you remember this, but I remember covering, there was somebody was found murdered out in a field, and you and I had to go stream out there to cover that with a live shot. Then I remember I was still there when the trial happened, the person that was caught, the murderer, and was found guilty. And like, so I saw that whole story all the way through. And it was pretty fascinating. You remember that one?
I remember that was the Gonstead family. And that story stays with me to this day because it was probably one of the hardest days well, for that family, obviously ever, but just in my career, because we had to break that story and the family didn't even know yet. And
Oh, gosh.
it was probably one of the worst moments of my life
Yeah.
in terms of doing something I really didn't want to do, but was told I had to do. And so that was hard. And so you just felt terrible for the family. But yeah, that was a terrible story. Wonderful family. And really that you could take it through the end was great, you know?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's those kind of experiences you prepare you. I mean, I've seen some fatal accidents, you know, really
Mhm.
stuff that sort of sticks with you. And
Mhm.
that kind of training, like I feel like I can handle anything now, you know,
Mhm.
because of
Yeah.
that news background.
Nothing surprises you anymore, right?
No.
So
Yeah.
Justin, we got to kind of wrap up here, but I wanted to, I always ask people, you know, what was their worst job, their best job, and a job or something they're still wanting to do in their life. So without hurting feelings, what was your worst job?
The worst job. Wow.
Or you could say
I
your
would
first
say
job.
the hardest job, the job that I was most not aligned with probably was telemarketing, selling Olin Mills portrait packages.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Graduation pictures.
Yeah. With the script on the wall in front of me, and they're like a tree of like, depending on their responses.
Right.
And I was
They
16
said,
years.
no, you
Yeah.
go here.
Yeah, that was terrible.
And your
I was
best
not very
job?
good at it. Best job. Well, Rogers Behavioral Health, of course.
There you go.
Of
See, you got to say that,
course.
right?
No.
Tied with
Well,
Rolling Stones.
yeah, time. I would say the Rolling Stones job was great. Yes. And, you know, if I hadn't started the family already, I would have kept touring probably for sure.
Yeah.
Because I really liked life on the road. It just sort of fits my personality, and
Yep.
I'm just good at it.
And anything you still wanting to do? What are you still thirsting to do?
Well, my ultimate goal is to be a big business mogul. So I've got some business plans I'm developing, and hopefully can make some of those happen. Not ready to talk about those yet, but
All right.
yeah, that's my
Well,
Well,
ultimate
when you
goal.
are, you know where to come. Old News with
Yes,
Dan Carrie. We'll talk
I'll
about the
announce it
next
there.
chapter.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
right.
I'll launch it.
Breaking news. Breaking news.
That sounds good.
Well, Justin, it's great to
Yeah.
have you on today and talk to you here on Old News with Dan and Carrie. And we're glad you took the time. And, you know, I could listen to you talk about the Rolling Stones pretty much for hours and hours on end. And
Well,
I
just give me a
have.
call if you want.
All right. Next time you're in Madison, look me up, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
And Pittsburgh, look me up.
Oh yeah, I didn't even realize you lived there. That's cool.
Yeah, it is.
And
It's fun.
well, just thanks for having me on. I'm so
Thank
glad
you.
you're doing this podcast. It was really funny to see that when I saw that one with Greg. So yeah, this is
Now
fun.
he can watch
Back in the
yours.
saddle again.
Yeah,
Yes.
totally.
Yeah. Thank
All
you,
right.
Justin. Great.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank you.
Justin.
Have a good one.
Thanks for tuning in to Old News with Dan and Carrie.
That's old news for now.
Join us next time.